So good evening. My name is Stephanie Seppiol-Milne, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Alumni Communications here at Valparaiso University. We're thrilled to welcome you to another season 3 of Alumni Experts virtual events presented by the Valparaiso University Career and Alumni Network, which is the new name of our department. Surprise. You'll learn more about that on Tuesday in the e-news. I am also pleased to welcome members of the President's Circle Giving Society and their chair, Susan E. Weston, class of 1973, who are with us this evening as we join forces with Inner Circle to provide a look into critical operations and opportunities here at the university.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. So representing the Inner Circle, this is our second Inner Circle event, and it's something that we have set out to do in terms of building a series of virtual events to allow the President's Circle Giving Society kind of to get an inside look at what's going on, what's important to students, what's important to faculty, to ask some questions and talk about those kind of topics. So we actually hosted our first event February 3rd, earlier this year, and we had 80 people signed up for it. And we featured 4 just extraordinary students, along with President Padilla, who all 5 of those individuals expressed the unique attributes of their Valparaiso journey. So it was a very great kickoff.
Yeah, that February event was amazing. And I'm so glad to see so many of you back for this next one. Thank you, Sue. And we're so happy to have you here as a co-host this evening too. And thank you to our generous President's Circle donors who are with us. This evening, we're joined by Professor Kevin Goebbert, class of 2003, Executive Director of Strategic Planning and Professor of Meteorology here at Valparaiso University. Professor Goebbert joined the Valpo faculty in fall 2009. He's taught a wide range of courses for undergraduates, primarily focusing on large-scale weather phenomenon and technology-driven courses, including synoptic meteorology and forecasting, numerical weather prediction, and meteorological computer applications. His research interests vary across the meteorological scales of motion, from turbulence to synoptic frontal systems to global climate change, as well as the scholarship of teaching and learning. In April 2021, President Padilla announced Kevin's appointment as Executive Director of Strategic Planning. Throughout the process, he helped to lead teams around the Learn, Serve, Lead, and Thrive themes. Tonight, he'll give us an overview of the Uplift Valpo plan and the initiatives that will take precedence during the 2022-2023 academic year. Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We have a full slate of questions to attend to after the presentation, but participants, feel free to use the chat function on the Zoom toolbar to ask questions of our guest. If we don't get to your question live, we'll provide a response via email after the event. We'll let you know how to send that question in case we miss it in the chat too. This program is also being recorded, so you'll be able to watch a full replay of our discussion on the Valpo Alumni YouTube channel and share it with friends and family who may not have been able to join us.
So thanks, Stephanie. I'm going to kick it off here. Kevin, a strategic plan is a huge, huge undertaking. So I'm wondering if you would kind of walk us through the process that the Uplift plan, what grounded it and what kind of grounded your discussions and your focus, because that's a huge undertaking.
Yes, great. Thanks for the question, Sue. It's wonderful to be with you all tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share some slides periodically through our conversation this evening, just giving you an introduction to kind of how we got to where we are today. And so it's been a journey. And so this is a graphic that we used on campus to help us kind of drive this thinking process. And so ultimately what we were trying to think about at the university is what's going to take us from just surviving as an institution to really thriving as an institution. We know that higher education has been undergoing lots of change over the past 3 to 5 years, especially, and that Valpo is not excluded from that. So what did we do? Well, starting all the way back in the summer of 2021, we started with kind of starting to survey and just trying to think strategically with various constituencies attached to the university. And then we led into a leadership team retreat that included university administrators and key faculty leaders. And then started engaging the campus throughout the fall semester in 2021. And one of our biggest events was having the campus community day, which we had over 150 individuals in the ballrooms at the university, where they generated over 1,000 ideas for us to consider as part of the strategic planning process. And so through all of these strategic thinking engagement events, we were able to collect information just about where constituents at the university wanted the institution to go. And so then all of this work led to the development of some working themes that we started with to then help us kind of think through and actually then create detailed initiatives to then lead the institution forward. From there, from all those ideas, from those thousands of ideas that we had, then we really started the planning phase. And this is where then we, brought together over 60 individuals from the campus to work on our theme teams, to then take those 1,000 ideas, distill them down into concrete action items. And so, with the 1,000 ideas, there were many that were very synergistic. And so we needed to collapse those in various ways to then really develop what we wanted for the institution moving forward. As a part of that process, we continued to engage various campus constituents. We had student focus sessions. We had one alumni focus session with the VUAA team. And then ultimately, we had to bring all these ideas and all this wonderful work that was developed by our different theme teams and bring it to what we called the wrestle. And there we had to choose. And choosing is a really hard part in the strategic planning process because we can't do it all. And so then through that process, we were able to start whittling down to what we wanted to be working on in the next 5 years. And then even from there, then we had to further refine what are we going to do in this next year, ultimately so that we could go to the board. And we went to the board in July of 2022 to seek their approval. And we got unanimous approval of the executive summary and goals of the plan so that we could then start the implementation process. And so that's kind of the journey that we took, highly involved throughout the entire kind of campus community. So I will go ahead and stop there because that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. We'll let you ask another question.
I appreciate that. And I love the terminology, the wrestle, because I can only imagine, so many ideas, and some of them are brilliant. Some of them are just dreams, but to be able to really come to terms with them. So I think that would be my next question for you, Kevin. And that would be, how do you narrow down that list of initiatives, whose voice resonates the most, and how do you prioritize those for implementation?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So what we had to do was I had a partner kind of in this leading this, Joe Bogner from the Department of Music. He led the strategic planning committee, which entailed the compilation of folks serving on the theme teams. And he and I took that first pass to developing a set of prioritized initiatives, from which then we brought that back to campus administration and other key campus leaders like the deans, to then have that further conversation about how do we choose and what should we choose, what makes the most sense to do so. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again to talk about the initiatives that we did then decide to prioritize. And I'll get to share a little bit about some of these key initiatives that we're working on this next year.
Awesome.
And so I'll start with this slide, which kind of really starts out with why this plan, and essentially then why these initiatives. And so ultimately, through our process, the general market out there and the students that are looking for higher education is calling us to change. And so ultimately what we wanted to do was think about how do we build towards the future in terms of the educational opportunities that are offered, the future in terms of the students that we're going to have. And so we want to make sure that we're that future focused. We want to be able to respond with flexibility to the evolving challenges of higher education in general, and the needs of the workforce for the 21st century. Additionally, we need to be more representative of the society we serve. We know that demographically, especially in the Midwest and Northeast, things are changing, and that our institution needs to evolve to meet the needs of those constituencies that we're going to serve to better reflect that society. And ultimately, we want to do this while solidifying the financial sustainability of the university to truly allow the institution and all of our members, our graduates, our current students, our faculty, our staff to thrive into the future. And so then all of this work to then figure out how are we going to prioritize this work? Well, we have 4 themes that ended up coming out of the end of the process. And these actually weren't the original themes that we had in the early parts of our process and evolved as we went along. And so first and foremost, we're an academic institution. And so our first theme is learn, where we want to create and make more robust our unparalleled learning experience for students that is nationally recognized for its excellence in teaching, learning, and demonstrated career outcomes. And so we had maybe 35 initiatives overall that came out of our wrestle process. That's still too many to do in a year and to focus on. And so then we started paring it down, and we pared it down to 12. And so initially here in this learn theme, we have 4 prioritized areas. One is this initiative that we've called Valpo Connect. Valpo Connect came out of this idea that the problems of the 21st century are often not based in a single discipline, but instead cover a wide range of disciplines. For example, climate change, right, really comes at it from a science perspective, but communities and people are impacted by rising sea levels and more flooding events and more drought events and all those types of things. So how do we tackle those problems? We want a way and a center to help us organize both an educational process, but a research process for faculty that can bring these things together in kind of a convergent educational way. And so that's the big idea around Valpo Connect. In addition, right, these challenges of the 21st century might require different general education. And so potentially along with this idea of Valpo Connect, but also being very intentional about the integration of leadership and service throughout our curriculum and co-curricular processes. For a long time, Valparaiso has had lead and serve as part of its mission. But we've done it really well kind of on the side. And so we want to make sure that we are integrating it within everything that we do and able to let our students be able to talk about that and use those skill sets no matter where they find themselves after their time at Valpo is done. In addition, the core liberal arts of the institution, we want to maintain its robustness on its own. And so we want to make sure that we strengthen the arts and humanities through the process so that they are solid for the foreseeable future. And of course, we want to make particular inroads in the online space, but by being very intentional and not just going to be, put anything online in any sort of way. We want to figure out what is our place in this space and how do we offer that Valpo education to a wider community and make it more accessible through online education. So for example, through folks who are out in the working world who may need to upskill in some way because a new technology has come along. How can Valpo, their home for education, fulfill that need in a meaningful way into the future? We don't know exactly what some of these things are going to look like yet, but it's exciting to think about and it's exciting for the campus community to make those next steps towards these goals. In addition to learn, the next theme we have is serve. Service is absolutely at the center of what we've done and what we continue to do at the institution. And our students log copious amounts of service hours. But this service goes beyond just physically serving out in the communities or going on spring break trips, but really is about serving our education to populations that maybe historically have been excluded from higher education. And so we are looking to keep students at the center of everything that we do and all of the processes that we have. And we've identified actually 5 different initiatives here in this category to help us move forward. First and foremost, this one we collectively call Many Ways to Be Valpo. And it's all about being a student-centered campus. And so whether that is your ability to go to financial aid and seek the answers you need, to interface with the registrar to get registered for courses, or to have our curriculum to be accessible for all of our students. And so we want to just be thinking about our processes in this way that making sure that the students are why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. We need to become more transfer friendly. As students transfer from institution to institution, we want to make sure that we can make it accessible for students to start at another institution and come find their home here at Valpo. And so we want to make sure that we can do that in a way that supports their educational journey, but allows them to succeed within our educational framework. We want to expand access to a Valpo education through the Valpo Success Initiative and the 2-year Access College program. We're piloting that this year already to see what that future might hold for us. We also want to make students who are accepted into Valparaiso University are prepared to start at Valparaiso University. And so this past summer, we had 25 students go through a summer bridge program, which we here call the Bloom program, to make sure that they have the right skills and right talents to be able to jump right in on day one and be a success without missing a beat. And we want our university to be more environmentally sustainable. It is imperative of college students that we do this, and it is imperative that through our calling as a faith-based institution to be good shepherds of what we are given, both in an environmental and a financial way. And so these are the initiatives that we've identified to push forward this year for our SERVE theme. Lead beacons, lead by example. And so we have a couple of initiatives here that are intentional about our leadership and service, one of which is going back to this idea of our general education and weaving leadership and service throughout. But there are a couple of key separate leadership initiatives that we've identified. Two in specific, we are Valpo Leadership in Action. Valparaiso was part of a pilot program this past year for a new Carnegie classification on leadership that we are going to go full bore and get this beautiful designation that we can then brand ourselves, not just as somebody who does leadership, but we demonstrate the leadership that our students gain and can go out into the world and will be a mark of pride for the institution to be an inaugural member of this leadership classification. Additionally, we are leaders in athletics. Athletics is just a great way of talking about how we make leaders in a co-curricular sense. We do it also within fraternity and sorority life and other campus student organizations and the like. But we want to make sure that we have the right mix of athletic programs to positively impact the university and our community and continue to develop leaders within the NCAA, but also within society writ large. And then finally, thrive. We thrive only when we are living out our lives of faith and service, both to each other and to our communities. And so we want to make sure that our institution then thrives so that all the people associated with the institution can thrive. And so first and foremost, we want to promote this initiative to care for faculty and staff, to make sure that they are appropriately compensated and then that they are supported in the work that they do in educating our students of today and tomorrow. In a portion of this thriving then are a couple of key enrollment activities about advancing towards a Hispanic serving institution. That is the one growing demographic in the Midwest that we want to make sure that we can serve them and all of our students to the best of our ability and really make sure that we are able to thrive in that sector of society. And additionally, around enrollment, we want to optimize our enrollment and program mix based on the ever-changing needs of students in the 21st century economy. And so these are kind of ongoing initiatives. Financial sustainability is an important part to the growth and thriving of the institution. And so we're looking to determine how we can structure all of our university operations to ensure that institutional success into the future. And finally, and most probably visibly out of this strategic plan, how do we build to our future? And this really means building physically, finding those right spaces to put investments to make sure that we have the facilities to properly meet the educational and co-curricular needs of our students. And so the two projects that are coming out of this initiative are evaluating the construction of a new athletics and recreation facility and a College of Nursing and Health Professions facility. This is a lot of work, and you're probably even overwhelmed just by listening to these 12 initiatives. I'm a little overwhelmed thinking about it as well. But part about this cycle that we're able to do, a part of our process, is that we get to regularly revisit what is the best priority for the institution at any given moment, considering that we have not only these 12, but another dozen or so that are already baked in that we could call up at any time if one of these actions we're able to finish and accomplish, or if we decide that this is not the right action to meet our needs right now. And so we'll have an annual cycle of both communicating and celebrating things, like doing an event like this to talk about what's been prioritized in the strategic plan, but then allow us to then annually go back and review, are these the right initiatives for the institution at this moment in time? Assemble, empower those individuals to seek the change that we need, build and launch those initiatives so that we can measure our success and then do our process all over again so we can continually improve this institution and make sure that it thrives into the future. Woo!
Woo, indeed. Yeah. Thank you so much for that presentation, Kevin. Yeah, there, like you mentioned, it's a lot. And I love the mix of priorities too, as a College of Arts and Sciences grad with a love for both of those literal areas. It's really nice to see the concentration in so many parts of campus.
Yep.
And in things that benefit us all too, in leadership, service, interdisciplinary athletics. It's great. So folks, if you have a question that you haven't already submitted when you registered, you can, like I mentioned before, you can use that chat function to submit it. If we don't get to it, I'll show you how to submit it another way later. But first, we're going to take a look at some of those pre-submitted questions.
Yeah, we did have a couple of pre-submitted questions, and I second Stephanie's comments that where we're headed with this, and I love the fact, Kevin, that you emphasize that these are our priorities, and many of these are underway, but we're also fully aware that we may dip our toes into something that needs to change, down the road, and I love the way that Valpo is taking that direction seriously. So. But we did have a couple questions. This one is from Barth, and it's a very statistical question, kind of like, do we wish to maintain our current numbers in terms of enrollment, or do we want to increase them?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. Thanks for asking. And so I would say we want to grow, but we're not setting a target that is artificial. And so one of the first things in the strategic plan and in our Thrive theme is that we've entertained an outside consultant to help us understand the market that we live in, to allow us outside information to tell us what might be an appropriate growth or stable level that the university should shoot for, so that balances both the need and wants of educating a larger student body, but not trying to just grow for growth's sake, to try to balance a budget where that may not actually be sustainable, especially with the demographic challenges that the Midwest and Northeast especially face. That we want to make sure that we're building the right size university so that we can really serve all of those students that we have well. And so I would say that we want to be higher than we are now, but it probably won't be exceptionally higher than what we have. And we're just about to get some of that preliminary information in there, and that by about January, we're going to hear that final report, of which then the university will be able to start making decisions based on that information to then set the course, at least for the next 4 to 5 years, based on that research.
Sure. Thank you. That's a great answer. And it's clear from the strategic plan that we're seeking enrollment, if you will, in a variety of different methodologies now. There's a variety of different students out there.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to bring a question from Kara, and it kind of toggles off of what you mentioned at the end regarding nursing programs. How is the growth and enrollment for nursing programs, and what plans are underway for more?
Yeah, so I think here, one of the things that President Padilla has made very clear is investment in the College of Nursing and Health Professions. And for many of you who have visited campus recently, they are still in Levine Hall. They are no longer in trailers beside Levine Hall. We do have a couple of other more permanent facilities that they're in, but they are inadequate to serve a growing population of college and nursing health profession fields. And the college has really been going at a great clip. I don't know if recently, if you just saw, I think it was yesterday, that the university announced that the PA program has been officially accredited through their national governing body, which is a large step towards securing that and growing that program. And so clearly, the university is invested in the strategic use of the College of Nursing and Health Professions educational pipeline. And so, how can we make that even a bigger force for the region and potentially even into Chicagoland to then meet the needs that there are nursing shortages all over the place. If you're a nurse out there, I'm sure you're like, yes, please bring me more people, because it's been a hard couple of years, especially with the pandemic. And our college remains strong and robust, and we want to be able to support that even better. And so that's why the new facility is one key element of the strategic plan in order to meet that need and have it thrive into the future. Because again, the resources we have right now are great, but they're not what we need to meet an even expanded nursing program and other programs like our occupational therapy program, the PA program, and other nursing and health profession programs, and the ability to grow in that space, into other health professions, because clearly we're going to need them as a society to meet all of our healthcare needs. And so educating them in Valpo will create really thoughtful nurses who can really meet our needs in so many ways beyond even just the medical way. So.
Well, and I think the facility will also extend our ability to create new relationships that will even magnify that impact further. Are you ready for another question?
Sure, go
Here
for
we
it.
go. This is from Peter, and a little bit different, but again, kind of about enrollment. What is our plan to attract and support international students? You know, we had quite a few before. So what is that plan?
Yeah. No, great question. And so this is a question that gets asked on campus a lot because I think many campus community members really love when we have robust international student populations because it just brings an extra character to the university. Obviously, during the pandemic, phases, it was really hard to recruit international students and have them successfully get to the country, but that has rebounded this year as things have opened up more. And so out of the provost office, there's a staff member who is focused on kind of the international recruitment strategy. And I think one of the changes, while this is not immediately addressed in a given initiative, this is part of the kind of ongoing work of the institution, is to make sure that we are working to bring in a diverse set of international students and not rely on single country relationships. Because if you follow the university at all, we definitely have these peaks and troughs in international enrollment based on some often very particular relationships we develop with individuals in various countries. And those are great, and we're going to continue to do those. But how do we then have a more varied set so that then we can continually welcome in international students of a wide variety? Right now, one of our largest programs that attracts international students is our Master's in Information Technology program. But there are many other programs, and I know a growing desire to have more international students come for at least part of their undergraduate experience as well. And so there's definitely a multifaceted strategy going on, or at least a development of a strategy so that we can, again, think about how do we diversify all these different markets so that then we never have booms and busts, because it's hard to deal with booms and busts from a staffing standpoint. And so we want to make sure that we're, again, expanding that Valpo educational opportunity to a wider swath of individuals and making it accessible for them to do so. And for example, continuing to build on the relationship that we've had in engineering with the Dalian program in China. How do we do more of those collaborative things where students can maybe spend 1 or 2 years at another institution, then 1 or 2 years at Valpo, and how do we really magnify that ability to then again bring and shape that Valpo experience to a much wider audience?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Are you ready to kind of divert a little bit to a different,
Sure.
get away from enrollment and students and talk about the Brower Museum? Now, when I was on campus for homecoming, and that was it was a lot of fun, but there was a lot of kind of talk about some neat things that were going to happen, some stuff that was going to change to the positive and add a little more energy. So maybe could you, Jane actually is the one who asked this question, when will it reopen? Kind of like, will it be a public event? Will it be something that we can celebrate on a broader basis?
Yeah, great question. Great question. This ever since the kind of pandemic started, and then when we were finally back on campus, faculty have been asking, when is the Brower going to open? And so last spring, we were able to open for some very limited hours, which allowed a couple of classes and educational opportunities to happen there. But then over the summer, we were able to hire a new director for the Brower, Jonathan Canning. And he is working to get the Brower back open. I think he's hoping within the next 2 weeks, but timelines are still a little bit in flux because the main issue we're having is making sure we get students hired to staff the Brower Museum. But the plan is that it'll be open Wednesday through Saturdays, starting as soon as he can. So hopefully kind of by mid-November. And that really planning for kind of a soft launch this fall. With then in January opening up to the kind of really regular hours of Wednesday through Saturday, including a special exhibit with African-American artists in celebration of MLK. And so that should be a pretty special kind of special collection to have out. And he's working actively to get all the paintings and pictures and sculptures out and displayed to be ready for that opening. And so it will be open to the public. Where you're going to want to go, though, is the Brower Museum website to see the exact hours and timeframes that it's going to be open. But it will will include some Saturdays, which will make it accessible for folks who are maybe living not directly in the Valpo community to come in for a day to see the wonderful pieces of art that we have here at the Brauer Museum. But it's a really exciting opportunity to get that back open, to welcome people back to campus in a more robust way, and to just, have that just the feelings that you get when you're able to step into that space and look at the artwork and just spend time contemplating. We're really looking forward to opening that back up to the broader community.
And again, I think it solidifies that relationship with the community at large.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful thing for the university to be able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
Yeah, we were so happy that you asked that question, Jane, because it gave us the opportunity to find out more about that and talk to Jonathan a little bit. So thank you, Kevin, for starting that conversation.
Yeah, I think one last thing to mention is that Jonathan Canning said, which his email is up on our website, if you do have further questions about the Brauer, he said, feel free to reach right out to him. He's glad and happy to interact with anybody and everybody, and is excited. And there will be more of a public announcement once we are actually open, and that will be broadcast both to our on-campus community, but also our broader regional and alumni community as well.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome to hear. I know I have a lot of great memories being in the Brauer as a student too. So that's great. So let's look at some other questions that we had submitted in advance. This one, there was someone that asked a question that I kind of had too. So I merged our thoughts here a little bit. So when any institution starts to come out there and present its future plans, right? Alumni always like to look at that and say, okay, that sounds great. What about all these things that happened when I was a student? Will that still happen? What is that experience like now? So regarding tradition on campus, how do you see Uplift Valpo honoring the university's traditions, particularly in the areas of academic excellence and of those faith and service areas that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Stephanie, and others who kind of contributed to that same thing. And so, I think one of the things to think about when you're thinking about a strategic plan is the strategic plan is really the moment in time where the institution is saying, these are the things that we're wanting to dedicate extra time, effort, talent, and money to improve about the institution. What it's not saying is all the other things that are going to continue to go on at the institution that are already really strong, right? And so, our institution will remain grounded in the Lutheran tradition of scholarship, freedom, and faith. And that what we're doing here is we're committing to how do we enliven that in today's day and age, and how do we make it more robust moving into the future for all of our students of today and tomorrow. So, part of it is that many things are not going to change, right? Academic excellence, for example, right? I mean, that is, I think, at the core of what every faculty member firmly believes in at the institution. And what we're trying to do is how do we do that now in an even more robust way in the future? We're really doubling down on this idea of leadership and service and making that come alive, not only within a co-curricular sense where I think it's thrived for many, many years, but also in the formal academic curricular sense as well. Where can we tie those together appropriately, and then ultimately allow our students to be able to talk about and use those skills as they go out into the world and serve and lead in so many wonderful ways. And so we're just looking to be even more intentional about some of those things. And so, the institution absolutely remains grounded in the foundation of Lutheran higher education, but that we are then dedicating for these initiatives extra time, effort, talent to make sure that we make more robust or change and pivot as we need to move forward. So you may not see things about the chapel in here, right? Well, the chapel ministry is a wonderful ministry, and we've decided right now that it's really good. And outside of the regular operational support and change that is ongoing within every aspect of the institution, it doesn't need extra time, effort, talent to then amend to make any better.
Yeah, if it works, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, and if I can just weigh in, because obviously I graduated a long time ago, but sometimes these traditions come down to the very smallest things. The victory bell. And, I can remember bowling in the old bowling lanes in the basement of the old Union. You're not going to be able to replace those but I think our students are wonderful at creating some of those new traditions that are going to be, that now are maybe 10 years old instead of 30 or 40 years old. And it's that gathering point. That's that connection that you mentioned before, Kevin. I think that's really the key, right?
Yep. No, it absolutely is, right? And that's the key to I think making Valpo home to each generation of
Yes.
Valpo students, right? That each generation, takes the traditions that came before it, augment them probably in small ways to make them their own. And I think in the past couple of years, due to COVID, there's been a bit more rapid evolution of some of those traditions and things. And so, but that it's always grounded, right, in this, in these really fundamental ideas that make up the character of the institution.
Yes.
Yep, that's that convergent education piece, right?
Yeah.
And those same kinds of conversations that are happening in classrooms in Calais Christopher Hall are happening in the chapel too, about the way people are impacted by what's going on in the world. That's great.
Absolutely.
We also had a question about the ambitious nature of the plan. So, you talked a little bit about those really right now strategic priorities. You had that list, and then can you talk about some of the concurrent progress that's happening already, some things that have begun, and which of those areas and maybe people or departments are already hard at work on meeting some of these goals?
Oh yeah, no, great question. So, part of it is, there's definitely this combination of what we call the operational imperatives and then strategic initiatives. And so obviously enrollment, right, is an ongoing thing at the institution. And now we're deciding to put extra effort and effort around growing the kind of pool of candidates who may have otherwise not considered Valparaiso University because either they thought it was inaccessible to them money-wise, or like for whatever reason they might have, and to do those sorts of things. And so, things like this pilot of the Access College are really exciting ways that Valpo is trying to live out its calling to educate, the next generation of students in more meaningful ways that can then hopefully bring them from that Access College and 2-year program into then our 4-year program, ready to hit that ground running, and then be able to go out into the world and make their impact felt. Things around like the Valpo Connect program. I was just in a meeting the other day, and we've got a great group. So we've got initiative leaders around these things, and we've empowered them to gather groups as they need to help move forward these initiatives. And so that group has brought together about 8 individuals. And I think around that table, there's a musician, there's a historian, there's an engineer, there's a Christ College faculty member, there's I think a second engineer of a different flavor. And so this eclectic mix, right, is just a really synergistic group that is thinking about, like, how do we converge these ideas? Even a language faculty member, right? Like, again, it's like all these issues, right, that humans face are at this intersection of all these different things. And so how do we intentionally talk into that space instead of all of us just, oh, I'm over here in my meteorology lane, and oh, I'm here in my culture and language lane, and oh, I'm over here in building things in my engineering lane. How do we need to build things to, prepare for floods that affect the people, right? It's like all these different things, right? And so they've already started thinking about, how do we create a program that will attract students into a scholar program that then is about climate sustainability, right? And so this thing that really, for this generation, tracks across everything. And how can we have them move through together so that they develop relationship with each other, but then are doing so through taking courses that speak into climate and sustainability in very meaningful ways, so that when they get to the end, they didn't just take a random suite of courses. They've actually taken something and now can really speak into something from both their disciplinary perspective, because they'll still be their major of whatever, but now then they've experienced some similar ideas across a wide swath of university courses. Talk about a powerful experience, and I'm excited to see kind of what they come up with and how that comes alive in our program. There are probably any number of other ways I could talk about any host of things, but those are some of the most exciting ones that come to the top of my head.
Well, and if I can weigh in on an exciting thing that I heard about when I was at homecoming, I heard about this summer Bloom program, and you mentioned it earlier. And, the first kind of class, or the first cohort that went through the Bloom program, designed to help those students, especially first time college students who are, having that experience or about to have that experience. I just think that that's a powerful message. And it will build future students as we go forward. And that's a small group, but that's a great size group to kind of begin with. And then I was thrilled to hear that we've already got in place the ability to kind of follow through. So once we finish Summer Bloom, how's it going? Are we going to touch base again? Are we going to continue to talk? Are we going to continue to nurture? Which of course, obviously feeds right into our 4 strategic pillars.
Yep, exactly. And key thing to the whole strategic planning process is that feedback cycle. And so learning from what we've done before to improve it for later years. And then so that we develop also stories, because doing these programs are not necessarily cheap, and we need good stories to then be able to find either donors or corporation funding to help support these important programs that then will again make the Valpo education more accessible and better for all of our students, not even just for the ones going through particular programs.
Yeah, and we should mention too, as we talk about that Summer Bloom program, which, by the way, some of the most amazing faculty on campus, I say because I had some of them, were working with these students, and I know that they must have had great experiences. But it is named after Professor Alan Bloom, who many of you may have known.
Yeah,
right. So his legacy is living there as well. We had a really, really great question in the chat that I want to make sure we ask from Carl, who talks a little bit about, I'm sure as you were working on the strategic plan, you looked at some peer institutions that idea that what are some other schools doing that Valpo might want to emulate? Could you point to 1 or 2 things that maybe you looked at a couple different institutions and said, that is a really good idea. How can we do that here with our special Valpo touch?
Sure. Great question. And it actually also allows me to say something that I neglected to mention in kind of the intro slides. We were blessed to hire and work with a consulting partner through this process. And so we worked with a company called Credo Consulting. They are a firm that helps with a whole suite of different kind of higher educational things, with a big shop in strategic planning. And they work with all kind of small to mid-size academic institutions like Valpo. And they were an exceptional partner for us, helping to frame a meta structure that we could evolve with. And so part of my answer is actually they served as a resource to help us kind of understand where we were falling and where some of our ideas were falling in relationship to other institutions they are either currently working with, that they remained unnamed with them, or had recently worked with. But outside of that, definitely the faculty and staff who brought to bear all their ideas, a lot of them came from other institutions or have family members or children who are attending other institutions. And so, for example, the Valpo Connect program came out of an idea that somebody saw at DePaul University, actually, here in Indiana, and just thought like, oh, that is a really interesting concept. I wonder what is something similar we could do here. And I think, we're obviously doing a very different spin on it, but there was the nugget of that idea that came from another institution that were like, we think there's something there that might be good for us. And what it will turn out and look like in the end, we don't exactly know yet. But the exciting thing is that idea found resonance with a larger swath of people when the idea was presented and how it's been refined throughout our process.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know there are a lot of schools out there doing great things, and I'm sure they're looking at us a lot too.
Yes, very much so. Yeah,
it's
a collective effort.
I don't know that I don't think that that's anything wrong to go ahead and look at other schools and see what they're doing, bring it in-house, and then kind of tweak it, manipulate it, and apply it to, again, we are going back to Valpo tradition, Valpo things that are grounded, that have grounded the university. So I think that that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Earlier, when you talked about the community day and the different the subsequent wrestles that you had with the different constituencies, I was going to ask you a question about the process that alumni played, moving toward the the implementation of the plan itself. So I want to ask you that question. I know you mentioned the VUAA board, but I know there were some other areas as well. But I also was left wondering about students. So this is a two-parter. You know, what were some of the key items of feedback and priority that you got from alumni constituents in developing the plan? And then students, what were the kinds of ideas and questions that they were bringing to the table during that development time?
Yeah, great questions. And thanks for allowing me to elaborate on something that kind of just floats by as you do the presentation there. So yeah, we engaged alumni in a couple of different fashions. Obviously, the board constructed a lot of alumni, so we engaged the board early and often in the process in both July and October as we were in that thinking phase. We actually populated a good chunk of our strategic planning kind of committee with Valpo alumni. So myself included, Joseph Bogner, the chair of the strategic planning committee. So kind of a unique perspective on Valpo from both having been students and then serve on the faculty and staff here. But then Homecoming 2021, we did an event with the national councils to gather feedback. That was a wonderful event where everyone got to give us information about what were those most impactful things that happened to you as a student, whether it was in the classroom, whether it was co-curricular activities. What was it that really grounded that? And I think that part of that feedback is what really made us want to double down on leadership and service and do it even more intentionally, because what was coming out in all the various flavors, right, was this like, oh, I got to do X. I had an internship. I got to lead an organization. I got to lead change. I got to serve others, right? All these things were coming out in their various flavors. And that I think really kind of grounded some of the conversation that we had. We then had some follow-on conversations with a VU alumni board a couple of times, including one of our theme teams that was specifically thinking about kind of how does alumni intersect with this. And so one of the initiatives that came out of our process that didn't get prioritized for this year, just didn't feel like the right thing, considering all the things that we wanted to do, was how do we bring alumni more strategically in both to the classroom experience? So being invited in, bringing your expertise in for various, lecture classes or experiential classes, but also how do we then, through our kind of new career and alumni network, intersect students and campus with alumni in very strategic ways. And so we've told alumni and career, like, hey, go forward, make any progress you want. We're not going to, put the extra time and effort behind it institutionally this year. But that, I imagine, will be something that comes up, if not next year, then definitely the year after that, to formalize it. And then again, take it that next step up to really rise it to the level that we want it to be at the end of the strategic plan. And so kind of throughout that, we had that VU Alumni Association gathering. And then we were able to this fall again, go back to the national councils and talk about what kind of came out there at the end. Students, we engaged students in various ways. One of the key ways was by inviting a number of them to the big community day event. And so we strategically placed them at tables so that they hopefully felt less awkward by being there, because it can be intimidating to walk into a room of 150 faculty and staff who, have all these ideas and degrees and all those types of things. But the students that we had there, I think, had a great time and absolutely contributed a unique lens to the lived experience that they're going through, both in the world and on campus and the education they're receiving. Through that process, then I've also then talked to the Student Senate once to get feedback on some initial ideas that were coming out of the strategic plan. And we had one of our theme teams do a couple of focus sessions. They did a focus session with athletes. They did a focus session with fraternity and sorority leaders. They did a focus session with student senators. They did a focus session with just a random assortment of students that they were able to collect to try to get that broad perspective of what were the important things that they were sensing were either going well and wanted to make more robust, or what things might be missing, and how could we support and do those things better. And so that all filtered into this idea of helping us refine these initiatives to make sure that we are appropriately aligning all the ideas that we, who might be older and think students want, with maybe what students actually want and need. So it was kind of a balance of all those different things. So it wasn't as robust as maybe I had hoped for at the beginning, but I think it was what we needed through the process, respecting the fact that, well, students need to be students and they need to be doing their work and can't be, as heavily involved as faculty and staff were in the minutia of kind of our planning processes, but making sure that we got that information in to make sure we grounded it, again, to be that student-centered campus. And one of the things that Credo always does that really helped us throughout the process is always remind us, why are we here and who are we doing it for? Students.
Yeah. And you gave them a voice. And
Yep.
even though, maybe the voice wasn't particularly refined or, minutely focused, and you're going to have to take all of those voices and create a direction out of that. But, in today's society, everybody has a voice. Everybody has, a desire to put out an opinion or an assessment or, so I think that that's a very fruitful process. Even though you might not feel like you got it as far down the road as you maybe wanted, you may have done more than what you thought.
Yeah, and now I should maybe speak up maybe a little bit into implementation here, right? As we're going to implement some of these things, especially because they affect students, our kind of initiative owners now have the explicit need to make sure that they interact with students or student groups or student-facing pieces to make sure that then we're continuing that conversation as we move into implementation, because that's when it's really going to start to affect the students, and that's where we really want to make sure that we're not unseemingly doing something that is actually harming the student experience or working against what they might need at a moment in time.
Yeah, and the current students now will be some of the first to benefit from the initiative coming out of the strategic plan, and then be next in line to support those initiatives too when they graduate and they fall into that group of folks that want to volunteer and be involved and help students in that way. We always love when really recent grads are engaged in that fashion, because yeah, there's a lot of life experience that they even don't know that they have yet that they can offer.
Right, exactly. And one of our faculty members came up to me, this was maybe, the second week of classes, and was like, oh, I've got this class I'm teaching, and the students have to do a project where they interact with students and get feedback. Could I use the strategic plan and some of these initiatives as a way for them to get feedback on this? I'm like, yes, please. And then make sure that comes to me. And I actually have a meeting with the student next week about parts of the strategic plan so they can understand it better to then go out and get feedback. So really excited to see that come to fruition here.
That would be fantastic. Cool.
That's wonderful. I have a question. I know Sue has one last question. I'm going to ask one before we get to hers. Just really quick, Kevin. When I talked about all your amazing credentials and all the academic work that you do at the opening of this presentation, I had you as a professor and you were amazing. You also have a focus in that educational leadership piece, which, uniquely qualifies you to be in this role that you're in now. How have you enjoyed and grown as a professor, as an instructor, as a researcher in this role? And maybe what's that first thing you look forward to getting back into the classroom and doing?
Yeah. Well, first thing, I haven't left the classroom. I've been teaching throughout this whole thing. Sometimes a little more than maybe I should have, just for my own sleep. But what have I learned through this process? Well, I was, very blessed to have the institution sponsor me a couple of years ago to go through a leadership education process through LECNA, which is the Lutheran Education of North American Conference, or the Conference of North America, something like that. That process really helped me understand my own leadership style and strengths through that process, which I was able to bring to bear on this endeavor that we had. And what I really learned through leading this then, in addition, was just how many wonderful people we have at the institution, and that when we empower them to do things, man, they can change the world, whether that be the students, the faculty, or the staff. And there is nothing more exciting than see the idea of somebody that started as this very, very small idea grow into this bigger idea that now could potentially impact the institution for the next 5, 10, or more years, right? And so kind of just being in the role to be able to empower others is such a rewarding experience because we are all shepherds of this institution and of the education that we give here. And seeing that come to life, whether that then I bring that back to the classroom. And remember when I started this gig, I was teaching a new class for the first time. I'm like, I will show you grace. Please show me grace through this process. Because I was like, oh my God, I'm teaching a new class while I'm doing this whole new thing. And they did, and I did. And it was such a great experience to do that. And so that was only because I knew that I needed to ask for that grace, right? And that they were able to give it to me. And then that has allowed me to help lead the institution in this way to see this this kind of document and this plan and this vision for the future come to life that I think folks are really starting to get excited by. And one little anecdote I'll share here. When we did our first interaction with faculty in fall of 2021, I had them, give a 1 or 2 word response to be like, you hear strategic planning and you think, and the biggest word that came up, the one that was input the most, was futile. And we had a good chuckle about that because faculty can be cynical at times, and we put it up there and everyone laughed. But then when we got to the end of the process and we shared the draft of the plan that was going to go to the board, we actually got a number of emails from faculty that said, I did not expect to be excited by the plan, but I'm excited by the plan. Maybe not the whole plan, but I'm excited definitely about elements of the plan. And you know what? That is, I think, a huge win for both the process and then the people that were involved in the process to put forward these great ideas that people actually feel are tangible things that can positively impact the university without losing the essence of what the university is. Yeah. We're not selling things off to then just become somebody else. We are instead double down and reinvesting in ourselves to be even better, but strategically focused in certain ways to seek those benefits that we want.
I love it. That's just phenomenal. So the bottom line is, when opportunity knocks, grab it. Don't second guess it, or don't say, well, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this, but yeah, that's great. So speaking of opportunity, I do want to ask, another quick comment here at the end is, how can alumni and inner circle members stay updated on Uplift Valpo? You talked about a lot of things that are underway. How do we stay plugged in so we know what's going on?
Great question. I'm going to share my screen one last time so that people can see the web address. Keep up to date at www.valpo.edu strategic-plan. This is currently still kind of in an old state. We are actively working on an updated kind of look and stuff that will also eventually, hopefully by the end of November, include dashboards so that you can see the progress we're making on the milestones we have for each of our plans. But this is where we will actively update information as we go throughout the implementation process. There are currently a couple of videos up there that you can learn more about the details of this plan, including from the provost, our vice president for enrollment, and our vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion that talk about various elements of this plan. And so this is where to go to keep updated. And you can find information there, and you can find my contact information up there, and are able to keep up to date with the university. We'll also try to put things into the various alumni channels, including through Stephanie and some of the bi-monthly updates that go out to alumni as appropriate. And we'll make sure that we get this in one of those once we have that updated website there to make sure that you have that access and that link that you're able to directly click on.
Cool.
Great. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, Professor Goebbert. We have so appreciated your expertise this evening. You mentioned that folks can find your contact information there on the strategic plan website, but if they wanted to send an email regarding the strategic plan, or if they had an additional question that they didn't necessarily want to ask tonight, the best email address to contact you?
strategicplanning.valpo.edu.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So, audience, on behalf of Alumni Experts and Inner Circle, thank you again for joining us. We have some more exciting virtual and in-person events coming up, including our next installment of Alumni Experts on November 14th, featuring filmmaker Carmen Vincent, class of 2020, who will discuss her documentary Teacher of Patience before the Northwest Indiana premiere screening on campus on November 16th. I'm also thrilled to announce that Katie Sanito, the gourmet goddess, will join us again this year to talk about holiday meal planning on December 8th. You can register for these events and more at alumni.valpo.edu/events. You can also see replays and highlights of past virtual events, including the February 2022 Inner Circle, which I highly recommend, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Valpo Alumni. And this event will be there soon. For more information about joining the President's Circle, you can visit alumni.valpo.edu/PC. We hope you'll also follow us on social media to stay connected to exciting news and events. That's at Valpo Alumni on Twitter and on Instagram, and Valparaiso University Alumni on Facebook. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye.
Bye.